Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is the fourth episode of the Bite-Sized Budget series, and we are going to talk all about yearly budgets. Now, as you guys can see, I don't have a notebook in front of me today. I do have my iPad, and that is because back when I was really starting to focus on my budget, I tried to do a paper budget and it just was too unwieldy for me. So I do budget digitally, and I find that that just kind of helps me keep on track of things. So in terms of like budgeting, and at some point I might need to do a video just kind of on my journey to getting to this point, but I use, as you guys probably are well aware, I use YNAB. I have been using it for, I think I'm into my third year. So I do use YNAB, and unfortunately on the iPad, I don't have access to all of the bells and whistles. There are reports and stuff, so you can look at all of your income and expenses over a month, over a year, what have you. So I do use it for my month-to-month budgeting, and as you guys can see, for example, at the beginning of the month, I go through and I fill in all of my different expenses, and I break out my paycheck so that I know exactly where everything is going, and I have specific goals that I have set. So for example, in terms of trips, I have set, for example, for my Italy trip that I want to do this summer, I have set a goal to finish by summer 2020, and so it tells me that every month I need to put in a certain amount of money in order to actually reach that goal. So what I realized from doing YNAB for a while is that I'm getting really good at looking at my money on a month-to-month basis, but I don't necessarily have a good idea of what my money is doing on a yearly level. So for example, how much income I actually make every year as opposed to just every month. Based on how much income and how many expenses I have, what is the amount that's left that I can use for savings goals, for travel goals, for fun money, like all of that kind of stuff. So it's been kind of on my mind that I wanted to do a year level budget for a while, but it just seemed kind of like a big job. So I finally sat down and did it. And the way that I did it was in Excel. So I am using Google Drive because I've just kind of gotten to the point where I do a lot of stuff on the drive now. So I have been using Google Drive, and I kind of played around with some different setups for how I wanted to actually lay it out. So for example, over here you can see I started doing a setup where I had it by month, and I was like, oh, that seems kind of weird. I've already got that in YNAB. I don't really want that. I really just want a yearly budget. So I ended up doing, you guys can see here, I've got 2018, 19, and 20. So I basically started with 2018 because I wanted to get an idea from a year that was already complete and kind of lay out how I wanted to do things. So what I ended up doing is I have a couple of different sections over here for how I have split out my money. So what you can see is for 2018, since this is the only year that it's the most recent full year that I have with like complete budgeting info. So that was kind of where I started. So you'll see here I have a total. So this was the total amount for the entire year. And then I've got an average. What was my monthly breakdown roughly of income and expenses? So you'll see here I've got, for example, in terms of income, I have steady income and variable income. So this is my actual paycheck versus, for example, the money I make for doing YouTube or affiliates or like any of that kind of weird stuff. So that is going to be in green because obviously that is money coming in. And then I have broken down into my biggest expenses. So rent, groceries, electricity, phone, internet, and random bank fees. And then I've got some other things that come out. So for example, my printer ink, I've got like a subscription, my haircut, health insurance, like that kind of stuff. So I do have some other expenses that come out, but this was just kind of giving me an idea. And I actually did rely on the report section in YNAB to do this. So that was really helpful having all of that information right there. So I could just kind of look at the total and look at the average. So this was the way that I kind of set everything out. And my ultimate goal was to figure out, okay, I have an X number of income and I have an X number of expenses. So at the end of all of that, what is left? So you'll see down here that I have, my plus section, my minus section, and then I have difference. So I have how much money is left over after all of these things that I can use for other things. So it gave me an idea of this was, how much money I had for the year and how much money I had per month. And this is for everything. So for example, anything that wasn't in here, this is going to be savings goals. This is going to be, if I want to go out to eat, if I want to travel, if I need to replace clothing, if I want to buy stationery, any of the other things that are kind of a variable all have to come out of this money, and it's a finite amount. So once I had done this for 2018, I then moved on to 2019. Now, when I did this, I did right here as of September 27th, 2019, so that I would remember going back through when I actually did this, because it wasn't at the end of 2019, obviously. So what I have is my total to date, and then I divided that by 9 to get the average, okay? So total to date divided by 9 to get the average, multiplied by 12 to get the estimated total. So that's why I have different columns over here. But all of the breakdowns are the same. So that's why you'll see that I have 3 columns for 2019 as opposed to 2018, because I needed some way to estimate what my total year would look like and then what my total month would look like. So this was kind of the way that I did this for 2019, because my main goal was to start budgeting for 2020. So I took my averages for 2019 and I kind of looked at anything that had changed, because for example in 2019 I moved, I had some changes in expenses, but in 2020, I'm going to be in my new apartment, things should be a little bit more stable. So I went through and I said, okay, this is what I think my monthly average is going to be, which means this is what my yearly total is going to be. And in terms of income, for example, I went a little bit lower than I think it might be. Hopefully I'm pretty close, but I wanted to estimate a slightly lower income rather than a slightly higher income, so that if I earned more money, that is more money that goes into the differences section for other things, as opposed to going, oh shoot, I didn't make as much money as I had planned. Then I have all of my different expenses. So I have a couple of different things that I've added on in here. I've got my monthly and my yearly stuff. I tried to look through and make sure I wasn't missing any big categories. So that then gave me my difference. So I have my monthly difference versus my yearly difference. So this is how much money I have to play with for everything else. And the average thing is pretty good, but as a teacher, I actually have a difference in income that, 9 months out of the year, I'm actually pretty stable. And then I've got 3 months where I drop down. So I lose all of my overtime hours and stuff. It's my summer income basically. So my my monthly average is not always going to be 100% accurate, but I wanted to kind of get that yearly so that I could play around with that. Even if month to month, I might have 1 month where I can, for example, save a lot more money and 1 month where I save less because of changes in my income. So from this, this information is all well and good, but what I really want to focus on is what am I doing with that extra money I have outside of my expenses. So this is where things got interesting for 2020. So this is where YNAB was really helpful. I looked at all of the different categories that I have and that I usually put money in when I budget month to month, and I wrote those down here. And then I started thinking, okay, if I have X number of money that I can play with for the rest of the year, how am I going to break that down into my different categories? So depending on the category, some of them I started at a month level saying like, okay, I want to have about this per month, and then I just multiplied by 12. And some of them, for example, things like clothing, I said, okay, I want to spend roughly this for the year, and then I divided by 12. So I kind of went both ways. It just sort of depended. I also made sure that I included in terms of what these categories actually meant. So for example, travel is metro and train tickets, because typically when I do a trip, I have a specific trip fund, and anything I spend for that trip will come out of that fund, including metro tickets and things like this. So this is going to be like local metro, Paris metro. This is going to be train going into Paris, for example, but like for a day trip as opposed to me going somewhere else. So that's why I wanted to have some details for what each category actually meant. So similar, crafting includes sewing, knitting, and whatever stuff that comes out. Savings is, big trip funds, investing, my sinking fund, like various things like that. Miscellaneous is home stuff and stuff I forgot to budget for. So that kind of broke it down like that. So one of the first things I did is I went through and I said, and actually I have to update this because I'm gonna have to update that at some point. But I basically went through and I said, okay, in terms of the money I have, what is my big savings goal going to be? So one of the first things I did was I went down and I estimated, okay, this is approximately how much I want to save. So I just put in 6,000. It's actually possibly a little bit less because I actually had an expense I forgot. So I had to fix that up here and I forgot to fix it down here. But I said, okay, if I want to save 6,000 euros in 2020, how am I going to break that down? So for example, I know that I've already started saving for my Italy trip in 2019, but I think that by the end of the year, I'm still going to have about 1,500 left that I want to save for. So that was my first thing that came out. I want to start working on things like investing, paying into retirement, that kind of stuff. So I said, okay, 2,000 at least is gonna go for that. Then I wanna have about $1,000 for small trips. So I have 4 2-week holidays throughout the entire school year, and I want to do like one big trip, but I might want to do some 3 or 4 day trips to other places, so put some money in for that. Sinking fund, so things that I will eventually have to pay out for, so if I want to replace my stove or like random stuff like that. And then to start thinking about my big trip for 2021, I don't even know what that's going to be, but I'd like to do a big trip for that year, so to start kind of breaking down some money for that. So that gave me an idea. Okay, here's what my big savings goal is. Here's how I want to break up those different savings goals because they're going to go into different funds. Based on this, what's left? And so then I went through and I said, okay, I've got travel. So this is outside of my big travel funds. This is going to be little things like day trips to Paris, buying metro tickets and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of went a little high on this. I actually probably don't spend $100 per month, but there are months where I might go to Paris twice for whatever reason. So I just kind of went a little higher than I kind of thought. Clothing, crafting, gifts, savings, so that's this stuff, pen pal fund, dining out, cafe fund, and miscellaneous. And that kind of, I made sure that my totals were less than the total difference that I had up here. So this is the first year that I'm doing this, which means that I'm going to have a lot of things that I'm probably going to have to tweak, things I, didn't realize, things I forgot, things I didn't realize I would need to include, things that I want to tweak in terms of totals where I want to put different money and that kind of stuff. But you have to start somewhere. So this is how I sort of approach doing my yearly budget. And one of the things that I wanted to do in addition to doing this sort of thing is I also wanted to think of some big expenses that might be coming up in the next couple of years so that I can actually start planning for them. So I have another thing which is over here. So I just created a document which has future goals. So I have what is my goal, what's my time frame, what fund am I going to use in YNAB, for example, and what is my estimated budget. So for example, I might want to get a new stove. If I end up staying in my current apartment for a couple of years, I'm probably going to look into investing in a new stove because mine is super old and it's not as functional as it could be. So I've put my time frame as potentially by the end of 2021, and this would be something that would come out of my sinking fund. And I looked online, I found some different websites that had different stoves, and for kind of what I'm looking for, it looks like I would have to spend between 300 and 600 euros. I also need to buy a new laptop. I've already replaced the battery in mine and the battery's starting to go again, so that is a big thing to do. I'm actually gonna do it for the end of this year. And I budgeted 3,000, which is high, but I wanted to make sure I had enough money so that I didn't accidentally go over my budget. And another thing is I might look into getting a serger at some point, maybe by the end of next year. And it looks like I can get one for between 250 and 350 euros. So those are kind of my big goals. I've left room for other things as they come up. And then I've also started planning out. So for example, my laptop, I'm going to be doing this year. So I started breaking down what my costs were going to be, all of the component parts and all of that. So budgeting on a month-to-month basis is really helpful in a lot of ways, but it doesn't really help me in terms of the big picture things. So big picture things like this that I didn't necessarily immediately plan for kind of can sneak up on you. And so I wanted to start really having a look at my year as a whole and figuring out where my money's going, making sure that on a month-to-month basis, I don't lose sight of the fact that like, hey, I really want to buy this thing this month, but oh wait, I have these year level goals that if I do that, I'm going to be short. So I really want to start getting a better big picture look at my budget and where my money's going and just finances in general. And I thought that might be kind of an interesting thing to show you guys. Again, this is just my example. You are going to obviously be working with whatever your income and expenses are, so kind of take it with a grain of salt. I'm in no way a financial person, but this is just me trying to figure out how to make the best use of my money based on what I've got to work with kind of thing. So if you guys have any comments or questions, let me know down below, and let me know if you have any other things that you'd like to see how I personally budget for. So, any other random things that maybe come to mind that I haven't thought of doing a video for yet, let me know. And yeah, that is all I have for you guys for today. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. Hey guys, so if you've made it all the way to the end of this video and are actually watching my end screen and you're not subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you would. There's a little button right there for you to do it. And if you're interested in watching some more of my videos, I have links to 2 of my older videos off to the left there, so you can check those out if you would like to, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.